All right, I'm here live with Jamarl Thomas from the Progressive Soapbox. Welcome, Jamarl.
What's happening, man?
I'm great. Thanks again for doing this, man. I appreciate it.
No, it's my pleasure. I mean, you came on my show, and if I'm being honest, I would have came on the show even if you hadn't came on my show. but it's only fair. I appreciate you coming on my show, talking to my audience, and explaining stuff to me. So the least I can do is come on.
Yeah, man, and I like talking to. I generally like talking to people, and I watched a couple of your live streams, and you genuinely come across as someone that wants to know. You know that there are two kinds of people. There are two kinds of people on YouTube. There are two kinds of people in the podcasting sphere. There's one kind of person that aims to be the know-all, that's supposed to know everything and have all the answers. Then there's another kind of people who are genuinely learning as they go along, and that's why I really wanted to talk to you as well. And I've been in the US for about a couple of years now, and I've had a passing interest, so to say, in American politics. What I find very interesting is the current political climate, because from what I hear all the time is that the current political climate is probably the most partisan that it's been in the United States for a while. Yeah. Is that true, or do you think that that's just people making a big ado out of not much?
No, I think it's true, but I think it's true for economic reasons. Like, I think it's one of those things where people look for answers, and they look for answers in the context to which they understand it. So you get the situation of people recognizing that there's a problem with the center, that the center is out of alignment with the interests of the American public. You can go down the list, healthcare, education, Social Security, Medicare, those things, they're completely out of alignment with those issues. And so you have this thing where the public itself is looking for something different. And you have Obama, who comes in, Black, Muslim name, that's change, like as an overt way, and this kind of just overt looking at the guy, it's change. But they didn't get what they wanted. I mean, he had a campaign of hope and change, this flamboyant, dramatic, hope and change. But the reality of it is, when you listen to those speeches, you don't really hear anything. Like, there's no substance there. There's no there. And so at the end of a campaign of a guy screaming hope and change in every mic that he can find, you get to 8 years, and it's like, what the hell happened in these 8 years?
Right.
It's like, yeah, my healthcare bills are still going through the roof, despite Obamacare's going in. This guy's been out there drone killing one person after the next and invading one country after the next. He was a better manager than Bush. And the question becomes, that's not the hope and change that people were looking for. So you end up in another campaign with establishment person, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, who, whatever you want to think of them, is change. I mean, if people were willing, on the day Trump got elected, the majority of the people thought he was completely unqualified for the job and still voted for him nonetheless. Those people were screaming at the height of their lungs for change, and they were willing to put Trump in office to do it.
Yeah,
terrifying. I mean, but they were willing to do it. So it's partisan, but the partisanship, I think, boils down from economic interests. Like, you have 95% of the wealth under the time Obama was in office went to the top 1%. That means 99% is fighting over 1% of the spoils.
Yeah,
that's an amazing. I mean, I'm sorry. Yeah, 95 is fighting over 5%. That's an amazing thing. You create a certain amount of chaos in your society based on the difficulties that people have in just trying to live within the context of the society, and people look for answers.
Is there a greater sort of disparity in income and wealth in America today than the last 20, 30 years?
Yes.
And why do you think that is the case?
Because you have a system where all incentives go towards maximizing of profit. Like, if the United States worships capitalist class. I mean, look at Schultz. Nobody knew who Schultz was. And he comes into a contest, and it's like, why are you in this contest? And why are you getting a CNN town hall? And it's like, he's a billionaire. Yep. It's not that he's better than anybody else. His cash is his entry fee into even just, this grand scale of politics where he's on a national stage just by virtue of his cash. Like, if you put somebody in a position where their job is to maximize profit, why wouldn't they do that? Yeah. And you ask the question, well, how do you maximize profit? Well, you attack workers. That's one case, meaning if I can lower the amount that I pay a particular individual, then I myself can expropriate more wealth from that situation.
Yes.
Or you get the product for cheaper. Meaning, if I can get these products from somewhere else or get these products made cheaper, then I can do that, and I can, again, maximize my profit. Now, some of this turned into exporting jobs overseas through things like NAFTA and the thing that Obama was going to put into TPP, which was going to kick that in overdrive. And again, it makes all the sense in the world. If I am head of a company and I want to make as much money as I can possibly make, I can pay this American worker $15, or I can ship this job to Mexico and pay that guy $3. He's getting $2 more than what he was getting before, and I am getting a product for dirt cheap. And because of things like NAFTA, I can ship those products back into the country with no tariffs associated with it. Like just the metrics or the system itself perpetuates certain behavior, if that makes sense. It's like, if you're the owner of a company, why wouldn't you try to maximize your profit? That's your job. When you're looking at drugs, then they would increase the price of a drug like tenfold over the course of a few weeks, and nothing has changed other than we can make all of this cash on the pain and of somebody else because they don't have a choice. It's a person who say, no, I don't want the cancer medication, or they're going to take the meds. I mean, insulin. Like, one of the pharmacists over here, her and I were starting a conversation, and she was saying how many of her patients cut their insulin dose in half because they can't afford insulin. Like, that's some insane stuff. That's the system that you have. And mind you, they're not doing that because of an act of God. They're doing that because of policies that are taking place in the United States that allowed healthcare companies to get paid twice as much as they would in other countries. Right. Like, you have a system that is built to maximize profit, and you have a system in a society that worships this thing of cash. You've lowered taxes on the top 1%. Donald Trump has a tax where he put trillions of dollars on the backs of the American workers while giving these guys a tax cut that they don't particularly need. Even Obama enshrined 80% of Bush tax cuts into law. Donald Trump was cutting the corporate tax rate, and the corporate tax rate has been cut, from 90% under Eisenhower, 70% under Kennedy. Reagan cut it that much further. Like, it's policies that drive this behavior. These things are not necessarily acts of God in the way the system goes. It's policy.
So let me compare it to, because I find the situation in the US very interesting, especially when it comes to, the discussion between capitalism and socialism. Is what I see in the US is I see it is either black or white, either capitalism or socialism. What some of the arguments that I've heard. So let me just give you an example and a small comparison.
Just to interrupt for a moment. All societies are mixed. Right. Like, I know sometimes people make that argument of, they're, what that guy who's like, I live like a capitalist every day. It's like, I have no idea what that means. It's like, it's a mixed economy. The military is the largest job creator in this country. Medicare, if I'm not mistaken, covers the majority of like more healthcare, or the government pays more healthcare for that stuff. Police force, fire departments, those things are elements of socialism. Social security. We're a mixed economy. We're a mixed society, even though we call ourselves this kind of capitalist nation. I
was just going to say that because I was going to give you an example of India. So in India right now, you have a prime minister who is considered to be very sort of capitalist minded, makes it easy for people to do business and so on and so forth. But at the same time, he has introduced some programs, some government programs into the country, which you could see have a very sort of socialist thinking behind it, like in terms of they've launched a campaign called Ayushman Bharat, which is basically India's version of Medicare for all. That's what it is. It's medical coverage for everyone. Then, there's programs that are supposed to basically bring in the people that could get left behind as India develops into the mainstream. You know what I mean? And so in India, even the people that are very market oriented or that are very market minded and that believe that the market should take care of things, even those people believe that there's a virtue to these programs, to these government programs, because it is helping people that are most likely to probably get left behind when the market comes and takes over. What I find in the United States, in some circles at least, is yes, capitalism is good, but we want no element of socialism, or let's not call it socialism, no element of sort of, taking everyone together. They believe that the market will take care of everything, and that seldom happens.
It's a religious belief. I mean, it's honestly a religious belief. I mean, these guys, it's one of two things. Either they don't care, meaning, look, I just want to get as much as I can get. I don't care about these other people. And in some cases, it's that. I mean, I don't know if you saw the debates where it was the Republican debates. It wasn't this term. It was a few terms back. I think it was Ron Paul was on stage. And they asked Ron Paul, they said, so what? If a person is lying on the street, should you let him die? And Ron Paul, stunned by this. But if you take the extension of what Ron Paul is saying, the answer is yes.
Yes.
You have some Republicans screaming, you let him die. It's like a red meat crowd where he's like, oh God, you guys are gross.
Yeah.
Look, I don't care about the labels. I look at this from the standpoint of, can we, as a society, as a collective of a society, do certain things to blunt the edges of capitalism? The answer is yes. Now, the question is, will we, and do we have the political will to do so? If there is one billionaire, there should not be anybody sleeping on the streets. I mean, come on. Between the point of this guy having $1 billion in the bank as opposed to that person being able to have a house or having somewhere to eat, he should have the basic requirements met, at least for me, from a moral standpoint.
Sure.
As a society evolves, those are things that I think the society appropriates. I look at it as the human beings themselves do the labor. They do the work. Anywhere that you go and get something done, when you're walking on the streets, that's labor that somebody put into it. That's some research that somebody had to do just to get the chemical mix right. When you look at the power line, somebody had to put those up. When you get, food from a restaurant, somebody has to serve that and make that. Somebody has to ship that. Labor is a component to all of those things. The very fact that you have a billionaire or millionaire is purely and entirely dependent upon the labor associated with that person being a millionaire, billionaire. The idea that I guess my point is there's a social contract between those two things. Meaning, if you're going to make your ends from a capitalistic system, at the very least, there needs to be an acknowledgement that it is impossible to have what you have without either people buying your product or people making your product. There should be this deal, this agreement. I would prefer that the workers in the 99% look at themselves as a collective and acknowledge that, but they don't do that. Our system is odd in the way where it pretends that as if that's not true. And the workers accept an argument from the perspective of a 1%. I find all this stuff to be really bizarre. Like they would say, yes, let's cut taxes. Well, you realize that cutting taxes is also you might get $1 back, but those guys are getting millions back.
Right.
And the arguments that Republicans make are often framed in this terms of we, when it's not really we at all. It's them and their class. And they try to make certain arguments to try to bring people on board when it's really not for them. I mean, look at Donald Trump.
What do you think of the argument that some people make that, putting a large amount of tax on, the sort of rich who make the money is going to discourage people from working hard to make that kind of money because they will feel like, well, what's the point if the majority of what I make is just going to go away? Then why am I working so hard? Do you see any value in that argument?
But it's not really the majority, right? I mean, the arguments that these guys make, even like Sanders, they're talking about a top marginal tax rate, meaning the high tax that the people are talking about, like let's say 75%, is on the top part of the wealth. It's not necessarily on the entirety of the wealth, meaning it's not 75% of the entirety of the wealth. It's 75% on wealth beyond a certain number. Let's say if it's like $12 million. Look, the job of the society is not to make people rich. I would argue that the job of the government of society is to a certain degree, a certain amount of social cohesion. And I think you lose that social cohesion as people start to accumulate vast and ridiculous amounts of wealth. When you get to the point where you have that much wealth and they start putting that wealth into the political process where they can pull the levers in a particular direction. I mean, think of healthcare. Like one of the a report came out in Hawaii where the healthcare law is working on dossiers of the various Democrats who were running in the race. And what the Democrats would say out in public to the audience was somewhat different than what they would say to the lobbyists. Because at the end of the day, they know the lobbyist is going to put dollars in their pockets. And we're supposed to believe that the dollars that are being put into their pockets in no way affect their political judgment when they go out to pass legislation, either on healthcare or energy or pick up the litter, taxes, for example. That's of course it's nonsense. Like that wealth is used in that way. I don't think Bill Gates would have done everything that Bill Gates did if Bill Gates still made half of his wealth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Jeff Bezos would still be Jeff Bezos if Jeff Bezos had $25 billion in the bank as opposed to $50 billion in the bank.
Right.
I don't you know, there may be a number to which they say, okay, screw this, I'm not doing anything. But we're nowhere near that number. Like that number is so like out of whack. In fact of the matter is, some of this is being argued just from the perspective of where we are now. Meaning, if we were back where, you know, it was like a 90% tax rate on the marginal tax rate, then the argument would only be, okay, can we lessen it to 70%? Like, and it's like, you know, is there any value in the argument that if we take it all, that type of stuff? My point is this: they would still be who they are,
right,
making half of what they made. Like, nobody is talking about taking the entirety of their wealth. Nobody is even talking about taking the majority. Many of the people who are coming out, there are some lefties who go hard on this point and was like, you know, take it all, eat the rich, and feed on the corpses. But the arguments of the Democrats that are in office, meaning like Sanders and Warren and everything else, they're talking about a wealth tax, but the wealth tax they're talking about is not, you know, it's like, would Jeff Bezos really have said, you know what, I'm not going to create Amazon because I'm only going to make $10 billion.
Right.
I don't think he would have said it. Like, I have a hard time believing. There may be merit to the argument depending on how much you take. Don't get me wrong. And if there are areas where companies or people can find ways to say, okay, screw it, I'm going to do my business in this particular place. Fair enough. But I don't think they're going to leave the United States market, being one of the major markets on the planet. And at the end of the day, if they're still making billions, I mean, what we're talking about is that wealth being kept in the hands of workers. That's the argument that's being made, that the workers who do the labor should get some proportion of that wealth. And that right now we have a system where the people who are in charge and the people who are in power have every incentive in the world to give themselves more while giving people less.
Yeah.
Think of jobs.
That makes sense too. You know, how many people do you think? Because, you know, now you're seeing people like Ocasio-Cortez being elected. You're seeing people like Sanders getting this massive amount of support, and you're getting people
don't exist without failures to the system itself.
Right.
Like, there is no Sanders or there is no Ocasio-Cortez. Sanders stood in irrelevance for like 20 years. Yeah. And, you know, as the economic systems got worse, the average person who's retiring has no money in the bank. Like, think about that. Like, the majority of the population itself don't have $400 in the bank. If they had an emergency, they wouldn't even be able to pay $400. Like, these are people who are.
Why do you think that is? Is that because of bad management on their part, or what? Why do you think that is?
I think their bills have gotten higher and their wages haven't gone anywhere. I mean, the real wages over the last 20, 30 years haven't gone pretty much anywhere. The top 1%'s wealth have gone up like over 100%, like some insane amount of money, which means that the difference between the wage growth of the top 1% and everyone else, that's wealth. That's wealth being expropriated.
Right.
Like, at one point, there was somewhat of an even keel in regards to the way the wages were going up. But at some point, that spiked. The wages remained flat for the workers, and for everybody else, it remained for the top 1%. It spiked, particularly for the top like 0.1%.
Right.
Like, where it gets just obscene. Not to mention inheritance, meaning when you can pass the wealth from one generation to the next, that wealth just kind of accrues on itself. But the workers themselves, think of their bills. So the amount of money they have to pay for healthcare, the amount of money they have to pay for school, the money they have to pay for childcare. In other countries, there's assistance with that stuff. In the United States, you're pretty much left to your own devices. Yeah. Meaning you, as a family, have to come up with all of the money to pay for all of this stuff without assistance. What would your world look like if healthcare was covered? And let's say education, private colleges was covered. Even if you were making the minimum wage job at that point, your two major expenses are off the table. And there are plenty of countries in Europe where that's true. Where they'd be like, college loans, why do people pay for, why does the government cover that? And it's not like we don't benefit from that. I mean, at the end of the day, do we want an educated population or not? And do we get more people educated when we have free public schools or when we're putting $50,000 of debt on their backs?
Right.
Not to mention the school loans. Like, we're $1 trillion. I think it's over like $1 trillion.
I saw a crazy number today somewhere. Yeah.
And it's like, what do you get married with that much debt on your backs? It's like, what jobs do you take? You're pretty much in indentured servitude for the next 30, 40 years, and you can't get rid of the debt. You can't file bankruptcy. If you had Social Security, they would even garnish your Social Security check.
Yep.
Like, this is insane stuff that we're talking about. And again, not an act of God, policy. It's policy. Like, it's just bills have gone up higher, wages have remained flat, and it's putting more and more stress. And people dealt with it by paying the credit cards. And so in which case they kind of just spun themselves in debt only because they were running, on a hamster wheel, not able to make ends meet.
Right.
It's somewhat of a cultural societal thing, but it's policy. It's policy.
With the number of because it's somewhere crazy, like the number of people that are now running from the Democrat side to become president. There's a lot of people in the running all of a sudden that I've noticed. Every day some new guy or some new lady pops up.
There's like 10 more people. It's insane.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's like a shelter. It's weird.
Well, they
people just keep showing up. What?
That's what it is. They smell blood in the water.
They do.
And they think there's like, all right, this is one of the most beatable presidents that we've had. I think they're going to be. I don't think Donald Trump is as weak as I think they think he is.
Yeah,
I really
agree.
Don't. And depending on who they put up, if they put up like a Kamala Harris or Cory Booker, I don't know if they'll do much better than Hillary Clinton, to be honest.
Yeah. So with all these people coming in, there's very few people which I feel like come with any drastically different ideas. When I think of whether you think those ideas are good or bad, that's a separate discussion. But just at the moment, just people coming out with radically different ideas than what someone like Hillary Clinton was offering, which a lot of people clearly were not on board with. You only see somebody like Bernie Sanders or somebody like Tulsi Gabbard or somebody like those two. I don't even know the names of most of the people who are in there now, but I don't really, it's hard to distinguish a lot of them from each other, isn't it?
It is. And, they've been trying to create this kind of distinguishing characteristics. Like Sanders is, socialist in the race. Everybody knows who Bernie Sanders is. Elizabeth Warren is the one that hates bankers. She'll beat up a banker if she can get away with it. Man, I swear, man, I think a banker took her lollipop when she was a child or something.
I also think, though, like, if you think about it, like, I understand that the United States had to bail out the banks in 2008 because
they didn't have to
avoid possibly, I don't know if they.
Well, they could have given
that
money to the homeowners. I mean, ultimately, the argument that was being made was the subprime mortgage couldn't be paid back because, they were made bad bets on it and the insurance company essentially bounced and that type of stuff. The U.S. government could have given that money to the homeowners and paid off those debts, which would have paid off those banks. But they didn't do that. They gave that money to the banks, and the banks turned around and didn't loan it. Like, that's the wild part. The banks held on to the money because the banks were insolvent, and they understood that if they loaned it, they may not get the money back.
The crazy thing also is that, okay, that was crazy. But the crazier thing for me was that none of those bankers suffered any consequences.
Nope, none.
Almost all of them got away with it. All of them got away with it.
Now, Obama cabinet was chosen by Citigroup. Now, we didn't know this. This was one of those things.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I didn't know that either.
Citigroup, one of the documents came up showing that Citigroup essentially chose the people who were surrounding Obama. And you look at all of the money that Obama got from Wall Street, and you ask the question, is it possible that the money that he got from Wall Street in any way influenced the ferocity in which he went after those bankers? Because if you remember, Obama at one point says, "I'm the one that's standing between you and the pitchforks." It's like, well, why? Why? Yeah. You're elected on hope and change, and you're out there throwing your body for the bankers. It's like, what the hell? I don't know. I know some of them are coming up with different platforms. I know Elizabeth Warren is trying. She is trying to get the darky vote like nobody's business.
I don't know if she's gonna be able to stand up to Trump though, because that guy is just. That guy's just a flat track bully. Yeah,
he's gonna call the Pocahontas all the time.
Yeah, he's such a flat track bully that he's gonna be. I feel like against Warren, he's really going to be able to rile up his base really effectively. And he needs. I feel like to really oppose him or to really give him trouble, he needs someone like Sanders. But I don't. So. Do you think that the Sanders magic is still there in 2020?
He won. Sanders got $10 million within the course of a few days.
Yeah, that's true.
That is amazing.
That is true.
About support, and this is like small donations. This is
like $1, $2, right?
Yeah, like $27 here, $10 there, and if anything shows support, and it's not plutocrats giving him money. They hate his guts. It's not people with huge amounts of means giving him money. There was one guy who was a millionaire who wanted to give Sanders money, and Sanders was like, Just give me the maximum that you can give me, and let's keep it moving. Like he doesn't want that influence in that way. He is blowing the doors off in terms of fundraising. People were fighting over Kamala Harris because she got like $1 million in a day, like 1.5. And they're like, oh my gosh, she got $1 million in a day. Sanders blows it out the water with 6. Like, so support is there. I guess the question becomes, can Sanders get through the Democratic primary? Now, I think he has a good chance in the general. The question is, can he get through the primary? That's the catch. That's the question. Because, they have the new superdelegate rules. And with those rules, they haven't gotten rid of superdelegates. Those superdelegates come in the second round of voting, meaning that because they have so many people in this field, if it goes down to like 3 people, it may go to a second round, in which case all of those superdelegates can go to whoever they want to, which means that Sanders could have the majority of the votes and still lose in the primary because someone else gets the superdelegate votes.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, isn't that what happened sort of last time as well?
Well, I would argue he was cheated last time.
Well, of course. I mean, it is a kind of cheating with the way, super delegates can sometimes vote. I feel like it's kind of cheating.
It's instantiated cheating. And not just that, like changing the polling locations. Like that was one of those, like Democrats started doing things that Republicans do to mess around and suppress the vote. You talking about something that opened my eyes, nobody's business. Like, because up to this point, it's like, oh, Republicans are monkeying around with the thing in order to suppress the vote because they want. And then you see the same tactics. You see, like in the various places, they would shut down polling locations. And it's like, well, why are you shutting down polling locations? Sanders has been bringing to the polls like gangbusters. I mean, you're making it difficult and creating those long lines. The thing, Arizona, where those people were in the line when they were, if I'm not mistaken, they called the vote while the people were still in the line. And where they were saying that Sanders supporters were throwing chairs when Hillary Clinton voters or delegates cheated. Mind you, it was only like 1 delegate, but still, it's the principle behind it. Like, and then you get into like the biases within the polling locations. So you would always see Sanders, like you would get the exit vote totals, and the exit votes weren't lining up with the actual vote tallies. Like it was a lot of oddities with that race. But even if you only want to go to the point of Donna Brazile, and Donna Brazile saying, it's like, yeah, we found it. There was an agreement with the Clinton camp and that type of stuff. So Clinton had all control over the messaging and everything else while she was running in the exact same race. Can you imagine that? It's like you're running in the race and you're the one who's firing off the thing and you're the one who's the tape at the end.
That's crazy, man. That's crazy that happened. What's crazy is that there was so much like support for Sanders in like the liberal media, but even when they found out that Sanders got cheated, and then when Hillary became the new sort of she got the nomination, I genuinely don't think that the media questioned it enough. They just went with it. They were like, all right.
They started asking, the wild part about it though is there was enough noise made where the Democratic Party understood we fucked up.
Yeah.
Because they started having a Unity Reform Commission, which is, was just a dog and pony show. And they gave a space for lefties to essentially yell at the Democratic Party. It's like, but you're yelling at them to what end? It's like that. This is kind of gamesmanship. They're trying. They realize they lost 15 million people, and they're trying to find a way to grab those people and bring them back into the party. So this dog and pony show, the Unity Reform Commission. Then you had the media who was at the DNC thing where they were looking for the chairman. They asked this question. It was like, Tom, do you think they were cheated? They asked Elizabeth Warren the same question. Elizabeth Warren one day comes out and says yes. The next day, Elizabeth Warren said, no, I didn't mean that. Yeah, they're looking crazy like nobody's business. Donna Brazile, same thing. Because Donna Brazile comes out and says, yes, I found the cancer that the cheaters ended. And he's like, I didn't say they were cheated. I said the cancer. Like all of these people fell off message and they fell back on message when they realized the message wasn't going to work. The media didn't, they would ask the question. They would say, Tom, do you believe Sanders was cheated? That type of stuff. But they didn't harp on it.
I don't think nobody really dug too deep into it. They're like, you know what? Okay, Sanders is out. Hillary is in. All right. It's Hillary time now.
She was running the race under criminal investigation. Anybody else? Can you imagine if Sanders had an FBI investigation?
They would have buried that guy.
The
media would have buried him. Yeah.
The party would have buried him. They would like, he's not even a real Democrat. He's going to go to prison. They would have been going after him. Calling him convict Sanders and all this other stuff.
I also think it's very interesting. I've been watching the way the candidates in the Democratic Party for the presidentship. I've been seeing how these people have been treated by the media or different sections of the
Yeah.
media, and I've been watching how someone like Tulsi Gabbard's being treated.
Oh man.
Or the lack of treatment, because people aren't even acknowledging that she exists as a person. They're just
or
like,
they attack her.
or they're attacking her, or they're just attacking her. Like the interview that she gave on her appearance on The View, her appearance on MSNBC. I'm just like, so all right, so you guys have your mind made up, and nothing that she will say is going to change your mind, and you've decided that, okay, my goal today on the show is to attack her. That's all I want to do.
It's terrifying. Like I realize, I know on my channel, each channel is like your own personal world.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are people who accrue to your channel, and those people to some degree are attuned, either resonate closely to you or resonate with you in a way where they, to some degree, are entering your world and grasp your world. And like, otherwise they wouldn't be there. It'll just be like nails on a chalkboard.
Yep.
From my standpoint, I don't like the interventionist foreign policy that the United States takes.
Right.
And in not liking it, I don't like it because I look at it from the standpoint of human beings. And as human beings, are these things to the betterment or to the detriment of the areas to which we're intervening? And I would argue that we've set fire in one place after the next. I mean, for fuck's sake, they're selling slaves in Libya right now.
Yep.
Like, so, and this kind of NATO mission is like, was that really a success when they're selling slaves in a place that you've left? Not to mention,
I mean, all you need to do is look at Afghanistan today, right?
Yes.
Look, this is probably the longest war that America has ever been involved in, the war in Afghanistan, and Iraq's getting right there too. And how much can you honestly say that there has been change in Afghanistan? Because Trump's talking about getting troops out of Afghanistan. And you have Taliban in Afghanistan already licking its lips, just waiting for the Americans to leave. You have Pakistan, and you have the ISI, which is the intelligence division of Pakistan, of the Pakistani army, that are licking its lips. They're saying, you know what? This is our time again. We get to control Afghanistan again. And so if you're in a situation where you leave after nearly a gap of 20 years and things are exactly being back to what they used to be, how much success have you had?
It's such a bizarre thing, right? It's like we have so much success, we're gonna have to stay here forever. Like it's a nonsensical, it's a nonsensical premise. Like John McCain was asked one day when he was during the election, it was like, how long do you stay? And John McCain said like 100 years. It was like, what are you talking about? Like, that's insane. You're just talking about an occupation. And a report just came out on Afghanistan.
Sorry to cut you off too. I'll let you complete that point. But what's crazy to me about John McCain is that one of the things that bothers me, because I've seen from being in India, you live in a troubled neighborhood. You've got China above you, you've got Pakistan to your left. Both of them are crazy countries. So you keep getting into trouble, and your army is involved in some kind of skirmish or the other on the border every now and then. So you see how tough the life of a soldier is, and what's crazy to me is many of these people, including John McCain, who are soldiers themselves, who have served themselves, but are still willing to risk the lives of soldiers, knowing what can happen to soldiers mentally and physically in those prolonged wars, and are not willing to bring them home. That's the part that boggles my mind, is because you're putting soldiers, good men and women, at risk for what?
You're assuming they care. Because
I feel like soldiers would care. Ex-soldiers would care. That's what I feel.
Some may. I mean, I think sometimes you have this. The further away you are from a decision, the more diffuse it becomes from the consequences. Yeah. So it's like you can sit in Congress and you say, yes, I'm going to vote yes on this. And it seems like the most mundane thing in the world. You go eat a sandwich for lunch and you go home to your wife. But the thing that you just said yes on kills like 1,000 people. Yeah. Like it's almost as if we separate what people do from the real world consequences of what they do.
It's like you're playing an MMORPG, It's like you make a decision and then the game deals with it.
Yeah, you're just going about your business. And it's like, but you're creating chaos. Like it's like there's complete and utter chaos. There's no war that John McCain was against. You know what I mean? Like he used any military conflict they were against. So also, some of these people have in their heads that it is America's place to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like it's our job to be policemen of the world. And from a cultural standpoint, it seeps into the culture. So it's like something happens in the world, and it's like, oh, the United States has to do something. It's like, why? Why? It's like, what are you even using to do that? What constitution are you using that says you can just willy-nilly go into another country? Like, what belief are you using? John Mattis Tulsi Gabbard was interviewing Mattis during one of the hearings. And Tulsi Gabbard read the Constitution to him and kind of made this point to him, like, what were you guys using from the standpoint of law to bomb Syria?
Yep.
They haven't attacked us. They're not our enemy in this case, where of somebody who's a direct threat to the United States. What are you using? And Mattis was actually being honest. He says, yeah, that's kind of complicated. Obama had that complication. No, it was illegal. Like from the standpoint of our own laws, it was absolutely and completely illegal. Holding on to the territory in Syria is illegal. That stuff is just a fig leaf that they use. Still, they use like this Iraq authorization for this stuff. Where it's like nowhere near Iraq. It's not. Yeah. It's like nonsense. But it's like there's no from the standpoint of military conflict, everybody is juiced up on it. Like the media, even like there's no war that could propagate itself without the media backing that war. And that's all of them. And even from regime change stuff and everything else. And if during the time of a regime change, you came out and said this is probably the CIA, they would say, oh, that guy's a conspiracy theorist. When in reality, you would think that they would know that. Like, does Chuck Todd and all these other guys know the history of the United States and Latin America and the countries that they've overturned? And if they don't, why the hell are they on the news? Yeah. If they do, they're being massively disingenuous when they're given a particular position. It's Donald Trump always calls it fake news, and they hate that. But there's a reality to him calling them fake news. Not all of it. Don't get me wrong, but sometimes it's not the things that they tell you; it's the things that they don't tell you. Sometimes the things that they don't tell you are vitally important in order for you to understand the situation. And in this case, dropping the history of the United States and Latin America, or for that matter, that Afghanistan used to be a decent country, that, that Iraq or was it? Yeah, Afghanistan used to be somewhat of a decent country. Same thing with Iran. Iran used to be a secular, country to some degree. Like there were some of these fires that were set. Sometimes people say, oh, those countries will always be that way. It's like, but those countries weren't always that way.
And also, I mean, there is some virtue to that. The reason why I say this is because, when we were just talking about, some economic solutions for the US, and we just what we talked about was basically a one size fits all approach does not apply to economic problems, know? And so the approach that works economically for the United States might not apply to Peru, or might not apply to, I don't know, Saudi Arabia, whatever. And then we think at the same time that one size fits all approach, that democracy, the way America knows it, will apply like for like to Iraq. Yeah, and it's never seen a system like that. That country has never seen a system like that.
Well, not to mention, it's not about business. Yeah. Like it's like we were talking about Venezuela before we started. And it's like, if Venezuela is not attacking me, then I don't care what the government of Venezuela has organized itself. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want it killing people. I don't want hurting people or injuring people. All things being equal, I would prefer people to have choice in regards to who's in power. But that is for them to make that choice. That is not for me to make that choice. And I don't want to spend money, blood, treasure, in trying to tell another country how it should be organized. Again, if it's not threatening me. It's one thing if it's like, this country is a direct threat to me, then fair enough. Then at that point, you have somewhat of a pretext to act. But oftentimes, the humanitarian cause has been bastardized into creating a pretext for war. So Saddam becomes this monster that has weapons of mass destruction when he doesn't have weapons of mass destruction. In Vietnam, apparently we were attacked by the Vietnamese, in which case we weren't really attacked by the Vietnamese. Bolton, what's his name? Pompeo is saying that Iran is in Venezuela, which necessitates, like, some of this stuff is mental. Bush tried to paint the United States flag on the side of an airplane. So, with this idea of trying to create a pretext in order to invade Iraq, you can have a litany of these. Turkey was caught on tape, or Erdogan was caught on tape trying to call a false flag in Syria, saying that anything that we do could be put under the guise of Al Qaeda. The United States under Twitter, not Twitter, the JFK, one of the files that were released showed that the CIA was talking about bombing a boat, either real or imagined, in order to create a pretext in order to invade Cuba. Like, these things happen, and people do these things. Right now, at the border of Venezuela, they're trying to create this thing of, oh, they're burning humanitarian aid. They're burning humanitarian goods, forgetting the fact that Abrams, back during the time where he was paying death squads in El Salvador, used humanitarian aid in order to put weapons and munitions into the hands of the opposition.
Right.
U.S. military transmitted those supposedly humanitarian goods. Like, we do things around the world, man, and it has real world consequences in regards to real people's lives. And yeah, I tend to be against intervention under that, guys, and I tend to be somewhat distrustful and cynical when they're telling me that, hey, we need to go kill people for humanitarian reasons.
Right.
Marco Rubio showing a picture of Gaddafi and sending that as a tweet. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, I think it's such a crazy thing, because it's such an insane amount of money being spent in these causes. It's such an insane amount of, weapons being used, and it's you putting your soldiers in the line of fire for no good reason. And at the end of the day, the only people pocketing money are the sort of industrial military complex and their lobbyists in Congress.
Yes,
those are the only people that are genuinely benefiting from this. Who else?
And don't forget that it's a jobs program. Like the military thing, it's a jobs program. I mean, ultimately, the money that we're dumping, that's our number one industry, if I'm not mistaken. We dump huge amounts of money into creating weapons, which for the most part goes to weapons contractors, and a little bit trickles down to the people who work on the jobs and that type of stuff. You have pork in various congressional districts. So a congressman may have a weapons contract in their particular district, which makes them less inclined to cut the military because they don't want to lose the military money from that particular thing. Like, there are all sorts of incentives that are built into creating a military industrial complex. And the problem becomes, how do you unwind that when that becomes one of your mainstays? I mean, you could create a federal jobs guarantee and then try to unwind that so that people who are not working in those capacities can work in a different capacity. But that doesn't seem to be the impetus. I mean, we're spending $719 billion a year in the military. We spent nearly $8 trillion just on the Iraq war, like the Iraq and Afghanistan war. And, I just watched a video of Feinstein telling people, we can't afford the Green New Deal. We spent $8 trillion. Like, that number is astonishing. And it wasn't for the betterment. It didn't create, roads and bridges. It didn't create waterways. It didn't fix the water system so people weren't drinking lead. It didn't do high-speed rail. I don't have my flying car. None of that stuff in place. I mean, at the end of the day, they threw that money into a hole and burned it.
Yep.
I mean, we're like $22 trillion in debt.
Yeah.
And there's nothing to show for that money. Like, it's one thing. I had a friend of mine, he's a right winger. And I asked him, I said, he says, I believe nobody's looking out for me, which is why I support the Republicans. He says, I don't think they're going to do anything for me, but I don't think the Democrats are going to do anything either. But the Democrats lie to me and tell me that they are. I said, what if your kid could go to school, meaning you had public education? What if there was an expansion of Social Security? What if, you had healthcare, meaning Medicare for all? Would you think differently about being $22 trillion in debt if those were aspects of your society and you could see where that money went? He says, yeah, maybe. Yeah. Shocking answer, but he said, yeah, maybe. I suppose he wouldn't be the only one.
Yeah, I understand that as well. It's just a question of now people that actually want to achieve those goals, are they going to get a shot at democratic leadership? And that brings me to another question, right? That's the question. In your experience, as long as you've watched American politics, what sort of a chance do you think someone like Tulsi Gabbard has? Because that she's someone that confounds Democrats and confounds Republicans.
Yes.
B, has policy ideas that make sense but would hurt a lot of vested interests.
Yes.
So what kind of a chance does a person like that stand?
Like Tulsi Gabbard?
Like
Tulsi Gabbard's
realistically.
biggest problem is getting through the primaries. I mean, ultimately, you have a lot of Democrats that hate her guts.
Yeah.
And
like the media hates her, and
media hates
part
her.
of the media either ignores her or just straight up hates her.
But this kind of explains why Sanders talks the way he talks. Like if you notice, when Sanders is talking about a subject, Sanders is well versed on these subjects. Like, so he could probably tell you chapter and verse of the U.S. military interventions into Latin America, and even in Southeast Asia. Like, he could probably read chapter and verse, meaning he knows. And yet, when he talks about these things, he talks about these things in very specific ways. Maduro is a horrible dictator. He's a horrible guy. He doesn't wash his hands, and he slaps kids. But we shouldn't intervene into those affairs. He would say the same thing about Syria. Bashar al-Assad is a brutal dictator who beats his wife. But he would say stuff like that, always adding a but. We shouldn't intervene into the affairs. He does that in order to avoid what Tulsi Gabbard gets hit by. You know what I mean? Tulsi Gabbard gets hit by, oh, you're a Assad apologist. Well, if you're trying to pass Medicare for all, it's somewhat of a pain in the ass to have to continue to get that junk off of you before you can even advance your own objectives in regards to what you want to do. Yeah. Sanders takes a particular tack. That tack aggravates the shit out of me. But that's the tack that he takes in order to deal with it, to talk about his issues.
I think even Tulsi Gabbard says that, I'm no fan of Assad. Assad's not a good person. But at the end of the day, we need to look out for the Iraqi people and the Syrian people as well. We can't just send the U.S. as well.
There. Like Tulsi Gabbard is absolutely right on this, but they smear her. Yeah. And she continuously has to make this argument. That argue is just flat fact right. This thing of the interests of the United States, meaning the American people, not the top 1%, not the people who are in these weapons contractors, but the interests of the American people are not served in these affairs. Yep. The amount of money that we're spending, the amount of people who are getting injured and screwed up in the head in regards to these conflicts, and many of these conflicts are wars of aggression. I mean, even calling the Department of Defense is somewhat disingenuous. It's Department of War. It's what it used to be called. Is what it is. Tulsi exposes that for what it is, and she says the most honest thing in the world that people run away from as if she's insane. Her thing is, it's nothing to do with whether Assad is a good or bad guy. It has to do with whether or not we have just cause to go into the country. And the same thing with Venezuela. It has nothing to do with what you think Maduro is a good or bad guy. It has to do with what fig leaf of law are you using to attack this country. You're breaking all norms of international law in the way that we've been going about our affairs around the world. We've taken this as like a superpower, and it's a unipolar world, and we can do whatever we want. Tulsi kind of makes the point that we need to stop that. If you're talking about passing a Green New Deal and healthcare and all this other stuff, you can't pay $1 trillion for a military budget and simultaneously talk about Green New Deal and environmental movement. You can't do it. Like, there's no way you can do both. Martin Luther King used to say the same thing. Yeah. Part of his reason for coming out against the Vietnam War was there's no way you can have this much conflict around the world and simultaneously deal with the needs of the people in your country. You can't do both. Tulsi's issue is getting through the primary. She's decided to wholeheartedly embrace the anti-war campaign. That's her thing. So Bernie Sanders is a socialist. Elizabeth Warren is the one who hates bankers. Tulsi Gabbard is the one who is completely anti-war. That's the way she's distinguished herself. If Tulsi Gabbard can get on the debate stage, Tulsi Gabbard will make a big fuss. I don't know if Tulsi Gabbard could be president. I suspect that she would probably end up in like a Secretary of State or of vice president role under a Sanders. But you never know. Like, nobody thought Obama could break through. Yeah. And you have a war-weary public where the public listens to her. It's like, yeah, she's making sense. I mean, not only this other stuff, but she's making sense on this very specific issue of not being interventionist. And she's being straight up and making her argument. And she makes that argument to whoever listens. And she's right about that argument, even though they smear her with that stuff.
What I find interesting about that as well is that I feel like Tulsi, it might be too early for Tulsi Gabbard in 2020. But what I do feel like is that I'm glad that she's out there right now talking about the things she's talking about, because she's going to let these issues and these things that she's talking about marinate in the minds of the people in time for the next elections.
And I want her on the debate stage. Like, I want her on that stage when somebody brings up, foreign policy, and Tulsi Gabbard is, I look at this from the point of view of a soldier. I was over there. Soldier is a hellish life. If you're going to use a person who dedicates his life to the U.S. military in this way, you should use that person for things that you need that person, not just willy-nilly foreign policy affairs, either for capitalistic expansion, like taking resources from places like, when they went into Syria or when they went into Iraq. One of the people, or Libya, I'm sorry, one of the close standing behind them were like oil contractors who could get the oil. But that's not for us, if that makes sense. Like, that's not for the public itself. Her putting that into the public consciousness, especially for a right wing and a left wing that has decided that they're sick of war. Like, even the right. Like, there's a video of Alex Jones where Trump bombs Venezuela. No, he bombs Syria. And Alex Jones comes out and flips out.
Yep.
And, usually he's off his rocker. He's like, they're, gay frogs and aliens, eating babies and stuff. But in this one, his argument was, how are you doing this? Yep. The Russians have helped us. You're going to start a war. And, we shouldn't be engaging into these military affairs in this way. And was an outright attack on Trump for doing so. Like, you have but he did that because his audience was against those interventions, if that makes sense. I mean,
yep, it does.
Our argument works for a right wing and for a left wing. And I've heard people who were on the right love her because they were sick of these military affairs.
I do agree with that, and I think that's why her entry is important because it gets people thinking about these things, and maybe not in 2020 because maybe it's too soon. Who knows? But maybe in 2024.
Secretary of State. Right. Amazing. I mean, like, that was an extraordinarily powerful position for her, either as a platform or
That's what I was going to say, that it gives her a platform, it gives her a public position, and then secondly, it gives people time to understand her point of view that, okay, she's not anti-war, she's anti-interventionist wars.
Yeah.
Like, she doesn't say that America doesn't want to fight, but she says that America doesn't want to fight the battles that it shouldn't fight.
Yes.
That's what she's saying. And I think, that there's a key difference between those 2 points. So I think it'll be interesting that somebody like that is in the national consciousness and is making people think about these things. I think that can only be a good thing. And I dare say that it could even be something that could get, conservatives and liberals to maybe agree on certain things.
Yeah. I think they do agree on that point, though. I mean, like, I've had arguments where, I'd be arguing with somebody, but when it gets to this issue of intervention, it's like, I agree with that point. We shouldn't be, knocking these countries over. And even Bannon, Steve Bannon, when he was in the Trump camp, his thing was against these wars. And even Trump, if you remember,
he started off like that.
He started off as this kind of peacenik because Hillary Clinton was going to start a war with Russia when she shot down a Russian plane, put it in a missile defense shield in Syria. Like, so when Donald Trump started off, if you remember, he was like, he wanted to be more conciliatory towards Russia, which meant less hawkish in regards to Syria. He was a hawk with regards to Iran, so don't misunderstand me.
Yeah.
But from the standpoint of Syria, I think he understood it is easy to screw up and get into a larger conflict on something like that because Russians are in Syria. They made their position clear. They've stabilized that government, and God bless them for doing so. It's not our business to get involved in these affairs in this way. There's a difference between a just cause and a just war, right? Just because, this is a horrible guy, this is a bad guy, he slaps his kid, et cetera, et cetera. But is that justification to go and take that guy down? And if so, what justification are you using? And if you're using a justification for him, why not Saudi Arabia? Why not Erdogan?
Exactly.
Why not, Sisi and
countries like Saudi Arabia and Pakistan offer much more or produce much more in terms of terrorism and global issues than a country like Syria. It does. Syria is hardly a player in that way. But Saudi Arabia and Pakistan are much more bigger players.
Well, but it's not about the terrorism. I mean, like it's literally about taking down Assad. The CIA was putting in money and weapons in order to take down the Assad government. And it was using this, the civil strife to do it. Many of these things don't necessarily start off just on square one. Sometimes it's something that takes place in a country where somebody can take advantage of the thing that's taking place. So in Maduro's case, like in Venezuela, you have somewhat mismanagement of the economy. Nothing to do with socialism at all. And you can make an argument that that country is less socialist than France, just based on the stuff that they've nationalized as opposed to not nationalized. But they've tethered their economy to oil, and when the oil prices dropped because the United States was pumping a huge amount of oil up, well, their economy went into crisis. Well, it's like, how do you fix that? You don't. From saying about the United States, great. We can blame socialism for this. We can attack Sanders for this simultaneously. We could say that this is what happens when you have a socialist government. It just collapses on this way. People have no idea. You know, they don't look into it. They just hear what the mantra over and over and over and over and over again. Socialism did this. Socialism did this. Maduro's a bad guy. Maduro's a dictator, etc. Missing the point that Maduro was getting elected, that the United States have been intervening into the affairs to make that situation worse and to keep that situation the way it was.
Right.
It's Tulsi Gabbard's position needs to be elucidated, and it needs to be on the debate stage. Like,
I agree.
She announced I gave her money because she needs X number of donations to get on the debate stage. And God, I want her on that stage.
I did too. I did too. Simply because I just want her to be able to present her view on a big stage like that. I want people to be able to hear. Yeah.
Like logically, it makes sense.
I just want her to be able to, I want people to be able to hear her. And I want people to be able to just try and understand what she's saying before you rule her out completely. That's literally all I want.
Yeah.
And look, Jamarl, I know you got to run, mate, but it's been a really fun time chatting with you. And absolutely. I would like to, you know, maybe in the future, as you know, these things keep developing, I'd like to do another chat with you about how, you know, the election process is going, how the candidates are coming along. I really enjoy talking about this stuff, and you know, it's fun.
I'm of course game. You know, I do this stuff like almost every day.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have videos later tonight, and it's gonna be in, you know, for the next so and so for forever long. And you know, elections are like carnivals to some degree, like holidays to me. So when they had like State of the Unions and all that other stuff, I love it. I get a kick out of it. So just let me know. I'm absolutely game.
Yeah, man. All right, let's do it. So, all right, Jamarl, again, thanks very much for doing this, guys. Please go and follow Jamarl. His show is called The Progressive Soapbox. It's on YouTube. I'll provide the link in the description below. Make sure to go check it out. There's a lot of good stuff. Smart guy. And I really enjoyed talking to him. And hope most likely we'll do this again soon.
Absolutely. Anytime you want. I mean, we're going to have an election season. I mean, just think, this election is like 2 years off.
I know, we're already jacked about it.
Yeah, like how do you keep up at pace like that? Because these guys are going to be going from state to state to state to state to state, and rally after rally after rally after rally, and do this for the next 2 years.
2 years, man. Yeah,
that is a brutal campaign season, man. God,
that's brutal.
I mean, that goes with the money thing. I gave Sanders, I think I gave Sanders like about $10. And the reason my wife gave him 27. Now, the reason I did that is because it's going to be each month, and this is going to be a 2-year campaign, and there's no point giving a ton of money. But 2 years, like, I don't think anywhere else in the world has a campaign season that goes for that long. Like, it's insane, like brutal campaign thing, but I love it.
Yeah, man, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun, and it's gonna be fun to follow it as well. So, all right, sorry.
There is a potential for change. This is the first time in my lifetime where there is an actual, real potential for change. I mean, whatever you want to think about Donald Trump may be different from the standpoint of rhetoric. Like, he's gross just in the things that he says and that type of thing. But policy-wise, he's just a neocon. Like, he's advancing the neocon agenda for Iran. He's advancing it for Cuba. He's advancing it for Venezuela. You know, he's doing those things that the neocons in the previous governments wanted to do. He's moved Jerusalem into Israel. Even Obama said he was going to do that, but all of them usually pulled back from because they didn't want to create that much chaos. I guess my point is, he's not a departure from U.S. politics. He is U.S. politics. You know, for them saying, "Oh, he doesn't represent our values." No, he does represent the values of this nation. He is this nation. He's the president of the nation. He's the person they chose. But there's a potential for change. Like, there's an argument that the only reason that a right-wing populist gets in is because the left wing couldn't find a solution, because that's the wheelhouse of the left in this case. And you have somebody who's a real lefty, like a true believer, like Sanders, whatever you want to think, was a true believer. He will reshape the DNC just because if he wins the presidency, he gets to choose the head of the DNC. Yep. And then you get to this thing of the president using the mob in order to affect an agenda. So it's not just, all right, I've gotten elected. Okay, you guys can go home and let me do what I do. It's in order to get these things passed, I need your support in order to scare the shit out of the various members of Congress. Meaning, I want you in their door, like in their lobbies. I want you marching. I want you protesting in their areas, because that is the only way you're going to be able to get your agenda accomplished from people who don't want to accomplish your agenda.
Yep.
That is a fundamental shift in the political space. I mean, even for the last 8 years, think about when Obama first got elected, public option was off the table. Nobody was talking about expansion of Social Security. He was even talking about cutting Social Security. None of that stuff was on the table. And within the context of 8 years, the argument that Sanders has made has exceeded itself to the point where that's the argument. Like the $15 minimum wage thing, that's been enacted in various states across the nation. Even Amazon itself got browbeaten to doing it. And it's something that he wants to make into law. The Medicare for all thing, again, something that people have become the discussion, almost like a litmus test. Right. The expansion of Social Security, all those things have become the agenda that Sanders is trying to push, and he's been honest and open and has defended it outright. So this is like the first opportunity for real change within the context of my lifetime. So I'm somewhat excited about that.
No, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to follow, and it's going to be fun to sort of talk about it in the future as well, about how these things are shaping up.
Yes.
So yeah. So again, thanks a lot, Jamarl, for doing this. Guys, man, if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure to share this video if you find this useful. And I will see you guys for the next episode. Until then, stay happy, stay healthy. I'll see you guys soon.